I mean, you can marry so many different options in there. So, okay, so now let's take a look at this particular triangle, and this is actually the very center one. And what I've done already is I've added my ABCD lines. Let me see, did I go E? Yep, ABCDE lines, just like we did in the sunset block. And now I want to do something just a little bit different. I actually want to make pointed rays with this particular one. And I know the center, I'm going to want a ray to come up and down. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use all of these lines as lines. What I'm actually going to use them as is stopping points for the rays themselves. So I'm just going to take a second here. Since I want this to be a ray that comes up to the point and down, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So I know that I'm going to be starting in this point here to work my way around this whole guy. So I'm going to lock my stitches here, and then I'm going to aim for each of my target points, but I'm going to do it on a slant. And one thing I will say is you want to make sure to test based on this center guy here. If you want that there, you want to walk it through in your head to know, am I going to start here and go up this way, or am I going to start here and go up that way? Okay, so now we're locked. Slide up there, grab my ditcher, line it up, and what I'm doing is I'm simply pivoting it, and you can see I'm a 1/4 inch away from where I want to hit there on the slant. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, stop. Now I'm going to pivot again, and I'm going to put it on a slant, and I want to make sure that I am a 1/4 inch away from that stopping point there. Angle it just a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot, and again I want to pivot it to the next point. Now, one thing I think I could do, so let me say this, we're not going to do it, but I just want to add this. I could measure every other line to make my rays a little bit wider. And if I did that, then I would actually go ahead and ditch the middle line back and forth. Almost like how you would seam each of the spikes in a mariner's compass to put it together. If you wanted to widen your rays a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to leave it just like it is. Going to line that up. And again, I'm going to go a 1/4 inch away. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot to the next one. You always want to make sure you pivot to the next one. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot to the next one. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot to the next one. You always want to make sure, don't put your ruler on the line. Just try to place it so that it is a 1/4 inch away. Okay, and just so I can get a view from the other camera for a second here. There, I'm going to 1/4 inch away on that line right there. So now I'll redo my ruler so you can see the B camera roll. One, 2, 3, stop, pivot. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. Now I'm going to go up to the tip. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. Darken my line a little bit so I can see my ending spots. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. 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 Get myself 1/4 inch away there. 1, 2, 3, stop, pivot. Now I'm going to aim for my ending spot there. 1, got it. 2, 3, stop. Now I can make some decisions. Do you see how cool that is? That looks wonderful. Now if it was wider, if I had widened those, what I could actually do, like I said, is do a straight line down between to kind of split those. What I'm going to do with this now, because I want this particular sample to have half of it with filler and the other half without filler, I'm going to go ahead, since I'm already locked here, and I'm going to fill this half. So I'm going to do some micro swirls and feathers. Again, I don't use just my regular stitch regulator when I'm doing micro work. I like to turn on my cruise or my coast or my start speed mode, depending on what machine you have. Start speed would be for the ANOVAs, and that way I get these nice stitches with good points even with micro work, and my machine tends to move a lot smoother. Come around, go in, out, add some tiny feathers. Keep going with my swirls and my echoes. Go right into that point. I want to fill that all in. Come around and up. Throw on some feathers so I hit that spike. That way everything looks full, but it doesn't look like I'm trying to fill it. You know, one of the things that I know about quilting is you want to make sure you're not looking like you're trying too hard. What I also like is, since I thicken that line 1, 2, 3 as we did those spikes, that gives that nice accent to really make those empty spaces and the spikes pop right out. Slide right up in there, echo my way in, touch the line because I want to touch that line. I don't want to leave any space in between. So I lay my swirls right up against that line so it doesn't look awkward. Continue on. And this isn't actually micro work, this is semi-micro. I'm going in to get that positive negative space. I could go a lot more micro, but I don't need to in this particular space. And by the way, if you're quilting for clients, when you're doing this type of micro work, you are charging on top of the price that you charge. This is not a part of custom charging. This is a lot of extra work that you're putting into the quilt, and it's part of the premium. That means when I'm doing this, I charge about $15, $25 an hour, depending on how much micro I'm doing and how small I'm going. Okay, come down, do my swirl. So you can see the difference. This half of obviously we have filled, and this half obviously we have not filled. So what I'd like to do is let's widen that lens on both of our cameras, and let's take a look and talk about this border for a second. Okay, so here you can see what I've done is I have done this side and not put any filler in, which looks wonderful if you don't want to take the time to put the filler in. Looks very modern, looks very clean. And then of course on this side what we have is that wonderful micro work that we've added in just to really make that border pop. And different quilts are going to call for different ways to handle each side of the border. So there you can see both of the examples of how we would do that. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed that quilt out. And I've used this so many different times. And again, one of the things that I would add is I've done it many different ways, more than I can count. But there have been times when I only used this one on all of the triangles, or this one, or this one. Sometimes I use this. The other thing that I will sometimes do with this guy is I will actually do a crosshatch, straight crosshatch on the 45, and then I checkerboard and fill in every other, which adds a really wonderful effect there. So again, there's a lot of different ways to treat this. So let me go to the table and let me take a minute and just very quickly brush up on what if I only wanted to do cornerstones and just have this in the center. Okay, so now we've seen the quilt out with the one that I showed on the paper at the beginning of this tutorial. So now I'm going to take you down to the paper and we're going to see using cornerstones how I handle that, which isn't much different, but at least this way this will give you a couple different options. So let's go down to the paper and let's see how that's done. All right, so I'm going to give myself my cornerstones, line that up. Line that up. Oops. Line that up. And that is the hardest angle for me to see because I can't see up over this side. Line that up. Okay, so what I would do is I would quilt some sort of block design in these corners, and that's pretty straightforward. You can go to some of our block tutorials to see some options for that. And there's lots of different ways, of course, like I just said, to handle the blocks. I mean, you can marry so many different options in there. So now for our next step, what we would do is we would locate our center, which I already have, put a line down the center. Next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to just kind of walk you through one option, which I used to do, but I don't do it anymore, which is starting from the center. Once we get that center line in, I could do my 45 degree, and I could line that up, and I can work from the center out, 45, 45, and then just have that end where it happens to end. The problem is that because your top border is going to be a different length than your side border, it's going to end up different. So what I prefer to do with this one is always start from the actual cornerstone and work my way in. That way this is going to marry what's right over here. And then of course the oddball, as we've been talking about, is going to be right in the middle, then rather at both ends. Okay, so now I'm going to line this up. I'm going to start there, line up my 45 degree right on my seam line, take that up, take that down, like that. Now look where I'm going to end up. I'm going to end up right here. So just like we did on the first one, I think I would rather go ahead, tilt my ruler, and have that hit right in the middle. And that's going to give me a nice big one. Now obviously this poster board is small, so it's going to look, you're not going to have many of the angles here, the triangles. On a full-size, queen-size quilt, you're going to have much more different 45 degree angles. So now we're going to go ahead, line that up. I'm going to start down here in the corner. Make sure you start in the right corner. You don't want to start up here and come down and have it be different than that side, like I almost just did. I'm going to line that up, come up, and again, just because the small size of this one, I'm going to line that up and bring that right down there. And now, of course, I'm going to work my way. Let me just finish that little guy right there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to angle this one, and you're going to see then how these corners are going to marry to each other. Okay, so now I'm going to come down, line that up, line up my 45 degree, come down. I would work my way down both sides, but right now I'm simply going to come down here. And also don't forget that you always are going to measure in your 1/4 inch, and especially when you're working with cornerstones, because you want to measure in 1/4 inch so you don't take off part of your cornerstone with your binding. Okay? Okay, so now I could go ahead and now I could put my straight line in just like we did with the original option. And this one is obviously already in because the edge of the cornerstone becomes that line. Down, up, down, put in my other angle here, got my 45 degree right on the edge of the seam. Let's go here. Let's say that was what was in our throat space. Line that up. There we go. So now when I choose my circle size, my eraser, what I'm going to do is same exact thing. I'm going to choose my circle size. I'm going to line that up. Man, that's etching always toward the paper. You always make sure etching goes toward the paper. If ever I have my ruler and I see a ghost line underneath, that means that you can't see it, but I can see because I'm looking at this angle, I can see a double line, and it's hard to see exactly where that line is. So you always want to make sure your etchings on the ruler are always against the fabric of the quilt when you're marking or against the paper. Okay, so now let's do our inside. Let's do our outside. And now up here, what we want to do is line that up. And so we're only going to do a quarter here because we are in a corner. So it'd be there and there. And yes, right now with this particular drawing, what I'm doing is I'm doing the circles first, but we also know that when we did the other one, you also want to make sure that you have your half-inch, quarter-inch in done. For example, oops, let me put that back. I need some sticky stuff on the back of my drawing rulers. There we go. Clean that up just a little bit. Okay, so in other words, don't forget, we are still going to go in, let me see, what am I going to do here? That's a smaller size, so I'm going to use a quarter-inch. We're still going to do a quarter-inch in echo, quarter-inch in echo, up to the line, stop, pivot, line it up, down. Okay, so we're still going to do our quarter-inch echo lines on each side of our 45-degree triangle lines, as well as that oddball center one that we do. Okay. Okay. Come down, stop, pivot, line up. Come down. Okay, so same here. Of course, we would quarter this. Oh. quarter, quarter, excuse my hand there, over here, quarter, quarter. All of these would be halves. And again, when we get towards the middle, I still want to use this line, even though this angle on this side is a little bit different. As we saw in the quilt out, it still looks way cool. Now, if you want on this middle one, you could actually use a larger circle to get a little bit of a different take and have the oddball center be a little more oddball than normal. Okay, so there you kind of see the bones. The one thing that I will say is that I always make sure that when I do a cornerstone, I am also going to, I'm going to bring this a little closer to me, I am also going to go ahead and if I used 1/4 inch echo here, I would use a 1/4 inch echo inside my cornerstone because I still want to have that matching negative space inside my cornerstone before I put whatever type of block design I put in there. So I would repeat that on both sides. Okay, and like I said, I would repeat the same thing on this side, and you kind of see how this corner can look really cool in contrast to the first way that we've done this. So there we have another tutorial for many options of border treatments that we can do with that wonderful 45-degree angle and some circles. Now in the future, we're going to be doing a lot of different shapes and kind of combining the two different techniques. So obviously I want you to keep tuned for that. And coming up shortly, in about a month or so, I'm going to have a tutorial with some marrying block designs that would go well with this. So I will see you then. I hope you're doing well where you're at, and take care of yourself and take care of each other, and we will see you down the road. 3, and notice how stable. Notice how stable. Pop! You have to put that in the chalk break. The reason I love this chalk, snap!